Does anyone have, first of all, any objections to us recording this for the others about TikTok? But anyway, well, first of all, welcome to all of you. First and foremost, I want to tell you how appreciative we all are that you filled out either the community survey or the stakeholder survey. We read them all, and there were 72 of them, and we appreciate all the feedback. Frankly, I was positively amazed how much narrative everyone gave us, instead of just, checking and yes and no's. So I thank you. My name is Joanne Kittel, and I'm co-chair of VtF the Future. I've been a part of this organization for 19 years. And Betty, would you introduce yourself?
Good morning. I'm Betty Perman. I'm a board member with VtF the Future for several years now. And I'm often connected to the social media webpage activities.
All right. Deb, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. Yes, my name is Deb. I am providing some consulting and contracting services to VtF the Future. I was born and raised here in Oregon, and I've spent my life in the environmental nonprofit world. So that's where I live. And I have served as a fundraiser, executive director, and program manager. And I am madly in love with Yachats. And so I bring my love, my skill set, and my knowledge of Oregon to bear on how VtF is moving through the next handful of years.
And boy, do we appreciate you.
Indeed.
Yeah, it's even a wonderful story because a very close friend of mine was a very close friend of Deb, and we met at a grant training. And she was even at the dedication of Eddie Huckins' bench back in 2012. And so we reconnected during the dedication of the Yachats Bridge, and you've been a wonderful asset to us ever since. We're very blessed. I always felt like Eddie had something to do with it. Dan, would you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Dan Stein. I'm brand new to this organization. I'm a neighbor of Mike and Rose's, just up the hill from them. And Mike told me about this, and I built a small house right above Mike, and I've been here for about a year. I've been on the coast for almost 15, 20 years. I've lost track, mostly in Waldport. And just curious what you folks do.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for your curiosity. Really appreciate you.
Okay.
Catherine.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Catherine Witten-Carey. I've gotten to know Joanne and folks through trails, and I've lived here just over 3 years, almost 3.5 now, renting, hoping maybe to build. And I am now also on the city council, and I am interested in just learning more. I know some about VtF the Future, but want to learn more and how to be more involved.
Thank you.
Good.
How about you, Roscoe?
Hi, my name is Roscoe Karen. My wife, Catherine, and I have been living in Eugene since 2014. I've gotten to know a number of the folks here working on the trails crew and Yips. We have a vacation rental here, so Catherine and I live here January through mid-June pretty much, and then off and on through the summer and into the fall. I've been in love with Yachats as a community for a long time. Let's see, I'm a member of the Yachats Philosophical Forum and the Yachats Men's Salon, and what else? Oh, the Bookies. I just got accepted into the Bookies group. I taught middle school for 25 years. I taught at the University of Oregon for about 6 years, and before that I worked in the woods. Planted many thousands of trees, did trail work, technical forestry, firefighting, all of that kind of stuff before I became too old to keep doing that, and became a teacher middle school, and I loved teaching middle school, and I hold VtF the Future in high esteem. I've been a political activist Basically, since I was 15 years of age, I've been a member of many different groups. And View the Future is a highly functional, really well-organized, effective organization. And I must say, Betty, the website is really a fine quality.
Thank you. Thank you.
Jennifer, would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. I'm Jennifer Pettit. I work at with OSU Extension Service here, the office in Newport. And I had the pleasure of working with View the Future on a project last year, and had a lot of fun with that. And yeah, really respect their work and happy to join today.
Jennifer, would you tell them what the project was? Still is.
Sure, yeah. We called it Trail Ed, which acronym stands for Thankful Respect and Acknowledgement for Indigenous Land Education. And it accompanies the hike in that it shares tidbits of Indigenous uses of the wildlife and plants that can be found along the trail. So one side lists the uses and the other side, the illustrations. And it folds up into a nifty pocket-sized guide. So that was really the most fun project I think I've worked on.
Yeah, and it's a beautifully done map and illustration, and it also includes a land acknowledgement that was supervised by Robert Kenta, Cultural Resources Director of the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians. Something that was very difficult for Robert to do, and for most, I can't talk about all, but certainly for the Kuzlar people to do. They don't like land acknowledgements. And so it was a learning experience for all of us. And they only want land acknowledgements that tell the entire unvarnished truth, not abbreviated ones, not ones that use non-provocative words and language. So this was something that his tribal council approved of. And then we have a second land acknowledgement from the Kuzlar tribe. They made some changes. So instead of us incorporating them, we have both land acknowledgements under our mission. So, and that was all initiated by you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
anyone wanting to see more detail about the project, we have it on the website. It's got its own page. So it's available there for review if you're interested.
Yeah, if you scan the QR code that's on the map, it takes you to that part of the web page that gives supplemental information, the answers to the challenge questions and bibliography and things like that.
Yeah. Thank you. And Gretchen, would you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Sorry about all the movement. My computer alerted me that it was about to die. So I had to run around trying to find my cord. I am Gretchen Doobie, and I've lived in Yachats for a couple of years. I've been coming here for 30 years. I lived in Eugene prior to moving here. And I am my former world. I was the CEO of a nonprofit for 13 years. And before that, very involved in abuse and neglect prevention and wraparound services for families in need, and moved here. And I've been doing some volunteerism with Midcoast Watershed Council and a project with my part-time boss. I'm just leaving that job, but I'm going to stay involved. They've been planting over 300 trees on their 60 acres for salmon rehabilitation. And working very closely with Midcoast on that. And I have had the pleasure of working with them, and since have volunteered with them on several of their projects before I got too busy, that is. And I ran into View the Future upon moving here, I was invited to one of their board meetings, and it was kind of uncanny timing where I was trying to get involved in other things within the city, and was so impressed with View the Future in comparison to any other group in town that I had met, and their mission and their values and their hard work and how much they got accomplished as a small group of people really impressed me. So I'm a huge fan, and I want to help however I can with the limited time that I do have.
Great.
Thank you, Gretchen. One of the things so for some of you are here, do you want to learn more about us? And that's great. And certainly it's not limited to this time. To learn more about us, you can seek out me or any of our board members anytime. You can sit down at the Drift or another place, Green Salmon, and we can talk away. As Jennifer's Trailhead project represents, if you go into our website and look at what we've accomplished, every single project, anything we've ever done in our whole history of 19 years, we've done with partners. And so, you know, to me and to the rest of the board members, it's been our greatest accomplishment, because that process of working with other people from other agencies, organizations, the tribes, have really been a very enhancing process. We all learn from each other, and no matter what the barriers or what the problems are, we can always accomplish it together. And so that's something that most likely will continue. We're not an island unto ourselves, for sure. So this is a time for you to ask me and Betty questions, or to make comments, you know, thoughts, suggestions. And I'd like to hear from any one of you, both in terms of learning more information or having recommendations for us. So this is your time. You can, you know, don't have to be muted or anything. You might hear a dog whining behind me, who's very needy right now, but we can try to ignore him. So go ahead and start letting us know what you think and asking more questions.
Well, I had something come up just yesterday.
Okay.
And I thought it would be a good conversation or resource starter, but because I'm such a fan of View the Future, I don't feel like I do it justice talking about it. And I'm wondering, besides looking at the website and everything, I know what you guys do, but do you have talking points for people who are trying to educate people, just in a quick 2-minute exchange at a restaurant or something? And so that's one thought, is some succinct pamphlet or handout or something on the website, just bullet points to talk about you guys. And then the second thing I was thinking about is all of the people who I've encountered in Yachats who are unfamiliar with View the Future, and coming up with different medium or avenues to market yourselves or get people to understand the importance of what you're doing, and that there's opportunity for them if they own land. I don't think people are connected to how they can help if they don't have money necessarily. So I'm sometimes at a loss when I'm talking to people about that.
That's very good suggestions.
Kind of along those lines. One, Joanne, just if you could clarify, you know, the number of board members, who they might be, and then also along with what Gretchen's saying, what are ways that individuals can become involved, again, if they don't have money to just donate?
Well, that's, you know, two very good questions. And Gretchen and I talked about this last night. I saw her, and we do need to become more creative as to get our word out there and who we are. The talking points are excellent. We do have on our website who the board members are, and you know most of them.
Okay.
You know, two of us right here, but John Thylacker is my co-chair. We have Sherry Dickinson, who's secretary. We have, I don't know how many people of all of you have known Dean Peterson. Dean used to be the bank manager when we had a bank in Yachats. And for years, he has was the treasurer for the Friends of the Yachats Commons. It's always done a lot of volunteer work. Well, the bank went away. He got another job. He lives in Toledo. But for the last 8-9 years, he's been our treasurer with View the Future, and he's excellent. We have Michael Hempen has been on the board almost as long as Betty. Mike Guerrero came on at the same time as Betty, and that's your neighbor, Dan. And we have Jocko Doss, who's also that lives in that area, and just up the road from you, Dan. And we have Sam Hillman. Sam came to us because he was a rare associate that we shared with Mackenzie River Trust in the city of Yachats. And he's our youngest board member. I think he's around 24, 25 now. And he's a dynamo. In fact, he's such a dynamo that he's just this week he finishes up graduate school and environmental planning. He's already part-time with Mackenzie River Trust, and next week he starts full-time with Mackenzie River Trust in land acquisition. And he is also on our board, and we're really happy. He's a dynamo. We also have Jesse Dolan. I don't know how many of you know Jesse Dolan. Jesse is the Central Coast Coordinator for the Oregon Coast Visitors Association. He's also younger. He's comes with a very complimentary set of skills, and he has contacts like you wouldn't believe. And I always say that he's very humble. He hides his angel wings under his shirt, but he's a very hard worker. We have recently acquired Liz Bird. She comes with a financial background. She was a financial analyst in her prior life. And so she'll be very instrumental in helping us go forward, and also helping Dean with the financial side of things. We also have Way Rondomsky. She is our newest board member and is with the Land Conservation Development Commission. And so she has access and a lot of knowledge about environmental grants, particularly the new ones coming out with NOAA. She's also very enthusiastic about View the Future and about getting more involved as we get through the strategic planning process that we're going through right now. Am I missing anyone, Betty?
No, Catherine Gunther.
Oh, yeah.
Has been a board member. She's been on leave as her city responsibilities have been requiring her time.
Yeah.
I think that's the only other name.
Okay. Yeah, and so we have a robust board, and we're open to new board members. We're always looking for someone who's an expert grant writer. I've been on through 7 grant trainings, and I don't consider myself an expert by any means. Betty went through one training herself recently, and in the environmental field, that's a specialized area that takes a number of different skills. We'd also welcome a volunteer that does that type of work. This whole thing about the strategic plan that Deb has been instrumental about has been to first and foremost to expand our capacity. We're a grassroots organization. We've done a lot. We've accomplished a lot with our partnerships, but we need to expand our capacity more to meet the larger goals that are out there that we've struggled with in the past. And one of those is this large piece of property that everyone sees from Yachats. View the Future historically was created by Andrea Scharf to acquire that property. And go ahead, Betty.
I think it might be good to clarify a little bit more what property you're talking about.
It's a property that when you stand at the Yahat State Park, everyone knows where that is. And you look across the river and to the east, southeast, that view shed. And you can see part of it clear cut. You can see the emergency response tower up there. Part of it got cracked off during the December 29th storm.
Yes.
Presently it's about 870 acres. It's had 10 owners since I've lived here. And it's property that is not attractive to a nature conservancy or an Audubon because it's wounded property. That's my term for it. We have not given up on the acquisition of it. We're always strategizing how to do it. And right now, the timing is much better. And as we move forward with it, we'll be calling on help. We'll be calling on volunteers. We'll be calling on publicizing the direction of this acquisition. Yes, Gretchen.
Is it presently for sale? And if so, how much?
Well, we don't, when you're dealing with huge corporations, and this is huge, this is one of the largest corporations in the world. It's an REIT, a real estate investment trust out of Canada that owns property internationally. They don't put properties up for sale in the traditional for sale
You'd
side.
have to negotiate with them.
Yeah, everything is what will you give us when, how much. They don't put a price on their properties. They do appraisals confidentially, and then they want the potential buyer to do their own appraisal, go into confidential negotiations, and then we see what the outcome is. We've been through this twice already with prior owners. One was, we started with Boise. They sold out to Forest Capital Partners. We were this close to a deal with Forest Capital Partners working with a consultant and another organization. And suddenly they went quiet because they sold out to an REIT called Hancock. Our negotiations on Hancock, we had to start all over with another appraisal and appraisals. We had to do 2 of them. Worked again with the same consultant. And this is where things can get hairy with any property acquisition. And that is that the appraisal was for one, appraisals were for one price. And the Hancock wanted it for $1.5 million more. You can't get public funding. You can't get grants when there's such a gap in what they want to sell it for and what we can buy it for.
No.
So we left on a positive note, but it was impossible for us to come up with that much cash. And certainly we couldn't come up with any grants that would be willing to pay that much more for property that wasn't worth it. Even the appraiser was just shocked that they were wanting that much money for it. And now Hancock has sold out to Manulife. That's the name. It's a Canadian out of Montreal. Well, so is Hancock. And by the way, Hancock is Hancock Insurance, just owned by a Canadian company. And so we're starting all over again. That's frustrating. And the history of this property, some of you may have been up on it. I'm happy to take anyone up on it. I have a key to the gate. Is that you get these big companies in, and we had prior owners too that even did worse than the companies, that they cut the wood, they do clear cutting. Boise, Forest Capital Partners, Hancock, and Hancock, Manulife hasn't started yet, have all replanted, but then they sell. And these are tree farms, they're not forests. And so these trees have grown really close together. They need to be pre-commercially thinned radically to keep a healthy, to return it to a healthy forest again. There's a lot of rehabilitation that needs to happen in that property. We had a prior owner that just wrecked huge amounts of that property that will need to go back to nature. And so a lot of our work, if a deal is made, will be in fundraising for stewardship and for rehabilitation. And there is money out there in general, nationally, more than in a long time, to acquire properties. There's very little money out there for stewardship, for rehabilitation. That's the number one problem for environmental organizations and agencies. So that would be one of the things that we would be calling on people for. In fact, we started a restricted fund in View the Future for rehabilitation and stewardship in preparation, because this could cost, just on Manulife alone, which we now call Yachats Ridge, could cost many millions of dollars. And it's a beautiful piece of property. We'd love to return it to the pristine forest it once was. It has more than several perennial creeks that originate from it. We have a pond, we have several wetlands on it. I found a wetland recently at 1,540 feet that just sort of sitting there, sort of hidden. There's a beautiful wetlands that's returning after the clear cut that feeds a perennial creek that crosses underneath the Amanda Trail. There's a pond that formulated from a quarry that Boise created. That's another source of water. So it's and it connects directly to the top of Cape Perpetua. There's a road. And so it has accessibility and has potential. It also has several beautiful meadows, one of which sustains the rare camas flower. And it borders a nice part of the river, lots of assets. And so we haven't given up on that piece of property. And there's other properties out there along the Yachats River and other areas that we would like to, over the years, expand our capacity to either find a purchase owner, or we purchase it, or we encourage private landowners to do conservation easements. So we have 5 conservation easements right now that we hold. Does everyone know what a conservation easement is?
Not really.
Okay, a conservation easement is an agreement that a landowner enters into to preserve a part or all of their property for environmental preservation. It doesn't have to be all of it. It could be an agricultural piece of property along the Yachats River, and they say, we're going to preserve permanently 300 feet on either side of the river and plant trees and protect the river, and we'll put up fences so our cattle doesn't trot along there. It could be, yeah, Jennifer.
Yeah, I was just, with the conversation here about this, you asking us if we know what a conservation easement is, and I think maybe there's a lot of folks that don't, know what that is or how it works, and perhaps they might be interested if they knew it was accessible and doable. So maybe like just presenting some kind of little workshop that would invite people to come and learn about the process of conservation easements.
Okay.
What kind of help they could have in doing that, and what are the financial incentives, and maybe presenting a couple of projects that you've already completed so that they could understand the process, and that maybe it's attainable, and people just think that it'd be kind of tough to do something like that, so they just kind of don't look into it.
Yeah, and along those lines, I didn't know how much land you need. And so when I'm talking to people, they're curious, but they automatically think, oh, I need 100 acres or I need 20 acres to do that. And my understanding is it can be really small.
Depends on the conservation easement. It can be very small. There's the Bryant property along the 804 North by your place, Jennifer, Gretchen. It's the north end of the 804 trail. It's
Oh, yeah, in the woods right here.
Some people
There's
call
stakes that say view the future.
right. Yeah, it's a 4.5 acre parcel that has a conservation easement on it. This was one where the owners sold the property for what they bought it for years before. And a appraisal was done and was like worth $120,000 more, which ended up being a donation because they didn't sell it for $120,000 more. So that was a win-win for them because it would have gone to the taxes anyway, capital gains. And then the county acquired it, and View the Future became, you have to have a holder on a conservation easement, someone that enforces the terms of that conservation easement. That's state law. There's a conservation easement statute. And so View the Future has 5 of them, but so does Mackenzie River Trust, so does the Oregon Coast Community Forest Association. Other land trusts hold conservation easements, and the conservation easement holder must be a governmental body, and that can include a tribe, or a nonprofit environmental agency whose mission includes that type of preservation. It can't be like YFAP being the holder. So it's and it can be expensive to do it. If like I have one on my property, I still own my property, I haven't sold it. It actually does sometimes make the property less valuable. So you do it for altruistic, yeah, thank you, reasons. It can be expensive because it can include appraisal costs. It can include surveying. It's good to have an attorney draw it up or review what has been drawn up. The legal document needs to be not only legally sound, but understandable to the landowner. That's been always a important thing for me, to make sure the landowner totally understands what they're signing off on. And then it has to be filed with the county, the clerk's office. Part of it becomes part of the deed. But if you want a tax deduction, then you also have to go and get it approved by the assessor's office. And that's another fee, and then they review it. But you already have to have it done and filed with the clerk before the assessor's office will look at it. So those, depending on the surveying, that can be very expensive, the appraisal that can be very expensive, the attorney costs, a conservation easement could cost $10,000. Now, we've helped 2 landowners with their conservation easements. They were small ones, but very, very, very important ones. They couldn't afford it. But also there's the Lincoln County Land Legacy Program. Those are Title III funds that were acquired 25 years ago, just one pot of funds, and there's still funds left. And that is administered by right now the county planning office, and it's approved by the county commissioners, and they can pay for those costs. They're reimbursed cost. But they mostly look at properties 10 acres and more. The conservation easement statute that you see with go online, they recognize conservation easements that are 10 acres or more. And that's usually where you can get the tax deduction. We have one small conservation easement, which is a bridge across private property to the Federal Forest Service for the Star Creek Trail.
My favorite.
Yeah, and those people, it's the bridge, and that plot of land on their side where the bridge crosses, that is now preserved forever. They're not going to get a tax deduction for that. There's other private property owners that, my gosh, it's so important. You can't realize how important their generosity is. And the only thing in their conservation easement on their 5 acres is to prevent any private third party from being allowed to access their land to enter another piece of private property that protects Salmon Creek, which is part of the Yachats watershed. And that's the only way that private landowner can go in there and clear cut is through having a road through their property. And so they're both very ill people, and they still did it with the support of their son, who will inherit the property when they're gone. And so those are 2 that we just paid for ourselves. And then we have the Goodman Botanical Preserve. Most of you know that. And so that's another piece of property that is under a conservation easement and was paid for by the Lincoln Land Legacy Program. We have a public trail through that property. So
And as you're speaking, I'm thinking of all of the aging population in Yachats and how many of them own their property and will be passing it on to their children or to no one. It seems like those, if we target the areas that would be most beneficial for a conservation easement, it seems like it would be beneficial to educate or target or reach out to the individual property owners to see if this is something they might be willing to put in a trust or parcel out their land that they're passing on to their heirs, part of it for their heirs and part of it for a conservation easement in the interest of conservation. There's a lot of people. I mean, the private landowners that I work with up north Yachats River Road have a 3-year plan to move into a nursing facility, and they come here every single weekend, and they're passing it on to their son, who certainly will not be able to be here every single weekend because he's a very big businessman in Eugene. But they're such a conservation minded family that I have been speaking to them about View the Future. And I know that they're hesitant because it's going to be their son someday. But if we have a team of people that go reach out to these private landowners, that might be an avenue to educate them about it and get them interested in this process. And that's why I need those talking points, because I'm trying to get to the sun.
okay, well, very good suggestion. I mean, I think the suggestion about just having a workshop, and I would like someone from the planning department to also be at the workshop because of Lincoln Land Legacy Program funds. So they could see that there could be an avenue, but also targeting some people in a positive way that would be wonderful. And then having those talking points. We may need to break down those talking points, that this is what View the Future does, but some specific talking points that are fairly easy to understand just on conservation easements alone.
Right.
Because there's a lot of private property in the area, and that would be wonderful to put into a conservation easement. Betty, you were raising your hand.
I just want to mention that we also have a menu item and more description about conservation easements on the webpage, as well as a description of the properties that we are supervising. So for more information about what we've got going, you can find that on the webpage.
Thank you. Yeah, Jennifer.
Yeah, I know like a lot of folks that live up the Yachats River, like they utilize some conservation easement in terms of like forest land and farmland easements, on portions of the property. And I was kind of reading about that, and I was curious to learn that a lot of other Oregon counties offer a wildlife habitat conservation management plan, but Lincoln County doesn't. And I just wondered, if there was a way that we could make that happen, because that would be nice to have that as an option as well.
It's an excellent idea.
Well, it is an excellent idea. And The way that happens in this county is you just do a conservation easement. And you include wildlife in it. It's not specifically geared to wildlife management, but all conservation easements do include a requirement to do a management plan.
Mhm.
And we ask our people who enter into a conservation easement with View the Future that they do it annually. The state law statute only requires it every 3 years. But we found that it's easier for landowners to do it annually than for them to wait 3 years and try to remember what they did and plan for the next 3 years. And that mine includes wildlife management. And it forbids agricultural animals on my property. Mine's pretty restrictive because wildlife and agricultural animals don't always mix very well. It doesn't require that at all, but it's something that I've included. These other counties that do specific management, plans. If the one thing I'm curious about, and I don't know, is if the county adopted one like the other counties do,
Mhm.
county then pay for those management plans, for the costs to do that.
Yeah, I was just curious, like, to know that, a lot of folks do use the forest land and the farmland conservation management, but that we didn't have that wildlife habitat here. And I don't know if
Well,
that's
yeah.
easy to get added or if that's a complicated process, but just
Well,
curious.
well, these processes are always complicated because that's what the government does, but doesn't mean it's impossible at all. But that's one of the questions. Anytime we do, we talk to people about them doing a conservation management plan. That's one of our questions. What wildlife, if any, would be included in protecting? And we like them to mention those specifically. Because wildlife is a very important part of a conservation environmental plan. And so, we do other things. Everyone knows, I think, maybe not you, Dan, you're new, is that we also support recreational trails and recreation. And we don't build the trails, by the way. There's been some misinformation about it. And I think that's because some of us on View the Future are also trail leaders and trail crew members. And what we do is when there's a specific project that involves recreation, our board can vote on whether or not we'd like to support that project financially. And that would be either soliciting donations and or writing grant applications. The latest one, of course, has been the the Amanda Trail Suspension Bridge. We raised close to well over 70,000. It included 2 tribal grants and a grant through the Federal Forest Service, and some generous donations. We also led and organized and coordinated with 8 different partners the dedication of that bridge. We've also done complementary projects to trails. We've developed 7 interpretive signs regarding the local First Nation history that was supervised by both of the local tribes. And that we were able to secure that with grants and with donations. So that is an example of some of the other complementary projects. The rehabilitation of the 804 connector between 804 North and 804 South at Aqua Vista, that was a grant written by View the Future. The trail signs, we have 3 of them along the Oregon Coast Trail that showcases the trail map. Those were also a grant via View the Future and donations. But we do it by project basis. The board votes on those things. And but we don't do general trail maintenance. uh, uh, funding. That's locally, that's supplied by the city. More capital.
I just have one more question about that. Like, when you look at the donation categories on View the Future's website, like there is one for like Yahat's Trails maintenance. But then there's one for, so they don't take care of the 804 or the amount, like, just wondering, like the Yahat's Trail maintenance, and then there's the Amanda's separated and 804 separated. But don't the Yahat's Trail maintenance crew cover all of those trails?
Yeah,
with maintenance?
Yeah, you're right, Jennifer. That's a misnomer, and we need to correct that because we have a general trails fund. And that's when people want to donate, and there's no specific, they want to donate to trails, but they don't have anything specific. We use that money to complement a capital project. Because those are donated funds. So part of that went to as matching money for the 804 extension rehabilitation, was the latest use of those funds. Some of those funds went to matching money for the trail signs. But then some people will only want to donate to the Amanda Trail. And that's only for capital projects. Then there's the boardwalk. We call it the Walkway Project. We have something like $60,000 in that donated funds, and that's the I call it the boardwalk. That'll hopefully be between Beach Street and the former landmark. And we'd be prepared to help write grants, foundation grants for that. We have then something called the 804 Fireside 804 Fund. That was initiated by Drew Roslin of the Overleaf and Fireside Motel. Those are a dollar donated per night per room, and that's specifically for the 804 North and 804 South. And he formulated a committee, and we make determinations about capital projects that will be done specifically for the 804 North and 804 South. And we're working, some interpretive signage came out of those funds. We're looking at a project about north of the Overleaf, it gets that dip. And it's impossible for wheelchairs to get across. So that's going to be a complicated project because of the archaeological sites. Because you just can't put in drainage without an archaeological site survey being done. But that's, that money could be used for that. And so it's umbrellaed under our auspices. Yes, Catherine.
I have a question. In locating land that would enhance any of those trails and so forth, is there any thought of being able to purchase the landmark property?
Well, there's always a thought.
It's back for sale.
It's back on sale again. And the county, I was told by Wayne Belmont, who's now, he was the administrator, county council since the late 80s, and he's recently retired, but still does contract work. And he's in charge of what's something called the 804 mitigation funds that the county's in control of, funds secured when mitigation was achieved for the 804 South. After another long historical explanation, but it can only be used basically to purchase land bordering the 804 South or North, or for some really special project. And so the property that I mentioned earlier, the Bryant property on the 804 North that borders it, near you, Gretchen, was bought and secured with 804 mitigation funds.
Oh, awesome.
And then the connector, the two lots that connect 804 South to 804 North, was bought with mitigation funds and then resold recently but keeps the trail easement. And one house, a neighbor bought one lot and then a house is built on the other lot, but you have like a 15-foot easement there. And then those funds had to be returned to the mitigation funds. There's like $305,000 in those mitigation funds. The county would love to put the rest of that money into the landmark. Wayne Belmont told me that, but they won't even approach it unless the city cooperates. Because the county will not keep that. The county doesn't want it. And so they would need to work with the city and buy the property together with the future, with an easement, some type of conservation easement on it that could only be used for recreational purposes, like a deck, and something that would be, some type of enhancement for the 804 South.
So do you have a thought or vision of how to possibly re-engage or to engage the city in such a process?
We tried and it didn't work out.
I know, but let's try
I don't
again.
I don't have one right now.
What was the reason? I'm so curious. What it seems like it would be in the best interest of the city to conserve that plot of land, and the city has a lot of money right now. And maybe it was a no-go because of the former mayor. She was real reluctant to spend the funds. Perhaps if we had more counselors on board with this, it's a win-win situation for the city and View the Future. So perhaps they would be more open to starting another conversation.
Well,
I believe the current mayor would love to see the landmark as a park.
yeah, I know the current mayor would, because we used to be on the View the Future board and we worked on that together. Until he needed to resign the View the Future board to run for mayor. He's very much for that, as is Wayne Belmont, and their and some others associated with the 804 mitigation funds. But we would need the city to buy into that. I mean, they want to talk to View the Future. They want to talk to the city. And that Wayne made that very clear. View the Future could raise funds for it. Again, we can raise funds for it. And we had someone interested in giving $70,000 at one point, but she withdrew the money and placed it elsewhere. I talked to the former mayor, and she, when I talked to her, she was still mayor at the time, she had misinformation. I wish she would have asked. Yeah, she had a lot of misinformation about how that property would be used. And
I would love for Gretchen and Joanne and me and Betty, whoever, to conjure up a new plan.
there would be $300,000 toward it already. And I don't know if the owners would be as generous as they were when we talked to them
Right.
a year ago, because they were willing to reduce the price of the cost of the property and then take a donation like the Bryant people did.
Right.
But I don't know if they're there now.
Well,
at
that's
all.
still a great incentive for any owner. So if they
Right.
did agree to do that, you already have 300,000, you said?
Well, I'm sure the mitigation funds have not been spent other places, because it's so restricted. We would know if they spent it on something else along the 804 South or North. And basically, there are not other land acquisition options along the 804 South and North. Well, there is one, but it's like $7.5 million. That's up for sale now along the 804 North. So yeah, I mean, we would certainly be open to raising funds for it, but it would need to be the city and county talking about it and coming to some agreement. That's the main thing. Yeah, Roscoe.
Yeah, I have to leave in a couple of minutes. I have to attend another meeting and Zoom host it. But the issue we're discussing and the walkway really begs the question of, because of View the Future's overall deep understanding of so many of these issues, including the history and the players, the agencies, all of that. So your unique role in the community. what seems to be missing is a way to apply pressure to the city council and the city manager to move forward and to act decisively. And I wonder how we could activate more people in the community to understand the issues clearly, in a non-complicated way, but also encourage them and provide easy ways for them to communicate with the city government to pressure action. And I think that Catherine would appreciate that greatly.
I wonder if we could pass a petition around.
That would be great. I would do that. It's any way to communicate. The city's right now position, and Catherine, you can correct me, is that they don't want to do anything with the boardwalk or anything until the county transfers Ocean View Drive to the city. Now that's their position. I don't know have any reason why the acquisition of the former landmark property would need to be applied to that. We're not going to be, it's about the acquisition. It's not about building anything on it yet. And if the city did acquire it, then it would already belong to the city. Certainly it would strengthen grants if we could combine the two. Because the whole intention was to integrate the boardwalk with the former landmark.
So that doesn't make sense to me. So it doesn't necessarily need to, but I don't understand that logic. Why? The two are totally different.
Yeah, I know. I know, but I can't answer that question.
Oh, you mean the street and the property are totally different?
Yeah, what
Agreed.
and so that's not an answer. Like,
Agreed.
Yeah.
it's just more about controlling the situation, it feels like, rather than having a vision for Yachats. And that's why I think a petition might be a good avenue, because no one wants to see something that doesn't fit go right there. And plus it's a really weird piece of property to build on anyway, but it just seems like if we started educating the community that we have this opportunity, but the city won't budge on their stance, that doesn't even make sense for their logic for giving us that answer, we can be assertive about requesting, I don't want to use demand, but requesting a logical answer for the no, because this is very much in the best interest of the city.
Yeah, well, I certainly view the future, would be happy to be partners and talking with the city and county. I mean, absolutely. And how we could help do that. And the citizens, like all of you here, coming forward and saying, yeah, we would like the city and county to get together and acquire this property, would, I think, be very positive. Yeah, Betty.
Some avenues of doing that would include a petition. Other avenues that could include individual emails to the city council and city manager. Also, at the beginning of the city council meetings, there is a period of time for the public to bring up issues that are not on the agenda. Now, these are not issues that will be discussed at that time, but it's an opportunity at that time to bring the question forward, and it communicates to the council that there is this public interest and the request for that explanation as to why aren't you moving on that? Why can't we look at this further? So as much as we can, as individuals in the community, interact with government, I think is to our advantage.
And I think there's a lot of people who are apprehensive to do that. So it's tricky because if, I don't know, I just think there's more people in this community who aren't as involved in the committees and the city council and the planning and all of that, that are paying attention in their purview to the issues that matter to them, that would never show up at a council meeting. that would never send an email, that just feel their thoughts and views about the city council. And so it's either intimidating or they just don't think they're going to get anywhere or something like that. And so it just seems like we can't just say, please email the city council. This is a very important issue. Because we're not going to get enough people, you know?
I agree that I think, sorry to interrupt. I agree that a petition is a much more anonymous way for people to get involved, and it takes less effort, maybe. I'm
Is that
also
gonna be
concerned with you saying
adversarial?
that people are hesitant to come as if they were feeling like nothing will be heard, which is so unfortunate.
Or it's just simply that maybe they're intimidated.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think having multiple avenues that people could speak their mind, whether it's Facebook, a poll or something like that. An informal poll of how many people on Facebook would like to see this property as is and have the city buy it. I don't know how you would want to do that. I certainly think that given the city has the reins here in the situation, we don't want to be adversarial in any way or upset them that we're trying to take action on this. So it maybe would start with a conversation with Heidi.
Catherine,
I'm probably not the best person to have that.
I think possibly it would be seen as adversarial either way.
That's
I
too
don't
bad.
know. I don't know. I think for people, maybe having that conversation is the correct way to go, or maybe it's just to start view the future, start with like a questionnaire, you know, what do you call it? What were you saying? Petition, and several members just walking their community and getting signatures and having a little piece of paper to give them saying, if you feel like you can write a letter, this is who you need to send it to. And I don't know. I think having the backing is so important so that our voices are heard.
And maybe an angle would be to post something near, adjacent to the landmark. I have a connection to the owners of that building next door. That weird funky blue building. It looks really weird on the outside, but it's actually very lovely on the inside. Maybe those owners would be willing to post something about the property next door in a big, huge, and we could use some donated money to make a very prominent sign that alerts people to the fact that there could be a X, Y, and Z built here, and that wouldn't be great. Would you rather see this or this, you know? And so that may be an option, but I think the conversation needs to start in the community so they know that number one, it's for sale again, and number two, that there's options that are being, there's a huge barrier from the city. I mean, just to say no seems so nonsensical. It just doesn't make sense. I could see if there was logic around the answer, if they didn't have enough money, or if they don't like working with partners. I don't know what their reason would be, but yeah.
well, let me ask Catherine this question. Can the city council, as an agenda item, bring this piece of property up as an inquiry to the community to find out if the community wants the city to enter into some type of
Good idea.
agreement? I mean, asking for feedback. Can the city council ask for that? And to
To
the
be
public?
open to it.
I would think, but I will ask Craig.
I mean, just the inquiry, not the saying this is what we want to do.
Right.
But we need feedback from the community because that's what's being promoted is getting feedback from the community. And then by making that city making the inquiry from the city council, then it would be then less adversarial for View the Future to be one avenue that could start a petition or some type of outreach if it was coming from the city. I know
Maybe,
it's-
Joanne, I can send you like a question that I would be posing to Craig and you say, yeah, that's what I mean, or you tweak it for me.
Okay, yeah. Because I think that's what you're trying to do, Gretchen. But since it's been, there's been some things that have happened that would just increase the adversarialness. I think if it's coming straight from the council as an inquiry, then it would leave an opening for these different avenues to move forward. And just see, you know, and because in a capital project anyway, and the way the inventory form is that you have to get public input anyway.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it's in the spirit of that capital project structure that's now been approved by the council that the city council could say before we even get that far, there's this opportunity here. And so let's find out if the public really wants us to work on this. If they don't, we won't waste their time.
Sorry to interrupt. I have to leave in 5 minutes because I got to head to work upriver. But I have 2 suggestions. Just things to throw out as far as marketing. The first would be NPR does free commercials for nonprofits, and just having your name put out there, people are like, what's View the Future? You might get more hits on your website if you start engaged with NPR. Also, newspapers have to put aside a stipend for nonprofit advertisement. The other thing that I did when I started the nation's first all-inclusive arts and culture program in Eugene. And when I was trying to raise money for that to happen, long before it happened, I was engaging the community by, like, we got to change the name, but they were called Jeffersonian dinners. So for obvious reasons. I switched it at the very end to community conversations. But what I would do was host 12 people, and there's a model. Jefferson used to invite people to his Monticello estate to garner community input. So he'd have these very elaborate dinners, and they don't have to be elaborate. I did a very basic soup, salad, bread thing every time. And I invited everybody that from different sectors of the community. We did this once a quarter for 7 years before this opened. And we had people talking from like all different walks of life about why they felt inclusive arts were important for the community and what was left out and what we needed more of and why this was such an important mission. So basically, I would pose a question at the beginning of the dinner, and we would have a facilitated conversation, giving everybody the opportunity to speak their mind about their views on this topic. And so you let people know that I can even give you the template from it. It's out of what's it called? Friends of Giving. I have the book. And so I can give it to you, but it's a very specific model to get people, first of all, knowing about View the Future. Second of all, knowing what your agendas are and what you want to talk about at that dinner that night. And would they be willing to take action in this way? And they need you to feed them the action. But out of those dinners, I think I hosted, well, you helped me with the math. I did 1 a quarter for 7 years, and I got a very large percentage of my donors for my organization from doing those dinners. So the expense to put out to get the support back was well worth it. And we were very, very, very successful. And the one thing they tell you not to do in that model is invite elected officials.
Okay.
We have access to elected officials anyway. But garnering that community input, we had a facilitator and a note taker. The note taker doesn't speak. And everybody gets, and you tell them the question, some poignant question. And I wish I had my questions handy. It was, a thought-provoking question about their value they place on this. So that in the formal invitation that you're sending them, they get these questions to think about. And then they come to dinner and you say, we put 2 questions out to you and we're interested in hearing what you have to say about that. And the dynamics around the table, I mean, it's sometimes a little hairy with people you don't know that you invite and they want to dominate the conversation, but it requires a strong facilitator. I would be happy to volunteer in that role if we could pull something together, because I'm very familiar with the model. But it was a great way to just get support, get donations, and get some stuff done.
Wonderful. Yeah, can you send us a template and I'll take you up on it?
Okay, give me a week or 2 and I'll get that to you.
All right, I know you're starting a new job, so.
I know my next month's going to be a little busy, but I still am committed to VtF. So
Thank you.
I'll help however I can. It was lovely meeting you guys.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
So for all of us, the 4 of you, there are 3 of you that are left, 2 of you that are left, any other questions or any concluding remarks? I appreciate your input so much.
I just really appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you. And we're doing a second one. I think it's April 12th or 14th. You're on mute, Betty. You're on mute.
I believe it's the 12th.
Yeah, if you want to come back and you have anything follow up or anything like that, this is not a one-shot deal. Also, you can contact Betty, me, any of our board members, anytime, face-to-face call. Sometimes that's a lot better than email, even though, email is good too, to continue these conversations. If getting more involved as a volunteer, as Jennifer did with that one project, and we're always welcoming those sorts of things. And so I'm very grateful to the conversation that we had today. And Deb, thank you for taking time to be here, and Betty too. So thank you all very, very much, and we'll see each other soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good
Bye.
day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.